Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you guys for joining Core 40. I know it was probably your bosses who are making you do this, but it's so important, believe me. I hope you are enjoying it, and if not, at least learning some things. But today we will be discussing SARTs or sexual assault response teams. Becca talked about it a little bit yesterday, but we'll just get a little bit further into the weeds. So, about me, Jasmine Davis. I use she, her pronouns. I did put my email in the chat for you all in case you have questions or just in general. Reach out to me if you want. But anyway, I got my bachelor's of science in sociology at the Indiana University of Kokomo. And then immediately I went to Ball State and got my master's in sociology as well. And throughout this time, I really focused on researching sexual assault, how to prevent sexual assault, how to respond, and all of the good things that you all are obviously interested in as well. So here at IKESA, I am the Sexual Assault Response Programs Coordinator. It is a mouthful. I have to count my words every single time. But we do systems-based work. So we work with the system that helps support survivors. So we are here to help you all. I know when I was an advocate, which I was for a few years, I was at Prevail as a victim advocate. But when I was there, I thought, IKESA and ICADV, y'all are the big dogs. I was a little frightened and intimidated, but please don't be frightened. Feel like a small dog some days. But please reach out to us if you have any questions. If you have any interest in specific trainings, we will try to get that up and going for you all. So please don't be intimidated. Reach out, call us anytime you need. So today we will be discussing what is a SART, who should be on a SART, why is it the model that the state of Indiana chose, and how do we work to build and maintain teams across the state. And if you want to read those things, you can go ahead. Just discussing the benefits of a coordinated community response, those team members again, and then the key strategies. All right. What is a SART? You guys, again, I'm sure you've heard it here and there. It's a funny word, but sexual assault response team. It is a multidisciplinary team. And by definition, these teams are meant to have different disciplines of people and professions working together to provide consistent, coordinated, and compassionate response to survivors. So, who are the multiple disciplines who should be participating? First of all, it should be the prosecutor. If you all have a SANE or sexual assault nurse examiner in your area, that is always incredible to have. Advocates, so I'm assuming that's a lot of who you all are. I know there are probably a few different disciplines in here as well. And then law enforcement. So not just one person from one law agency. You should be trying to get at least one representative from each law enforcement, sheriff's department, local department, anybody that you can get. And then other disciplines, it can be DCS you're inviting. If you have a child advocacy center, invite those folks. Sometimes people have advocates or Title IX folks from their local university on their SART as well. Get creative. Anybody who is helping a survivor one-on-one, who is part of that process, invite them to the table. It's always great to get to know who that person is, just in case you need them. And yeah, know their face, know how to contact them, all of that. But SARTs should be meeting on a regular basis. They should establish a protocol that outlines the duties of each discipline and how to work together efficiently. What does a prosecutor do? What does a law enforcement officer do? Advocate. What is all of their different types of confidentiality? You should be talking about all of this in your protocol. And the real strength of a SART comes from building those relationships, like I said, so we can collaborate together and coordinate our services. So SARTs lead to better decision making because we understand each other's roles better. We're more efficient in the use of our limited resources because sometimes we do have limited resources, especially our rural communities. And we just improve interagency response and have more seamless referrals. If I know Stephanie is my sane and I know exactly how she likes to be communicated with, that's going to make it so much easier and better for the survivor's experience. All right, so how did we get here? I'm sure you all know sexual assault has been an issue much longer than we all have been here. So, our efforts in fighting sexual assault and responding to it are relatively new. We're just like a little blip in the time. But nationally, the anti rape movement started in the 60s and paved the way for the start of the crisis movement there. First rape crisis center in the country opened in 1972, and then through the years, it became clear that we would need to work in a multi agency collaborative way to better serve survivors. Then through the 70s, we see the collaboration start and would eventually lead to what a SART is today. I mean, multiple disciplines gathering together because they see the benefit led to what is now a SART officially. And then by the 90s, SARTs started to receive national recognition for their efforts in programming and developing protocols and guidelines. This timeline is included for you all to understand that this movement is still young and we are working our way to find better processes and all of that. And some counties in Indiana have really strong teams that are very engaged and working well together, while some counties don't have a team at all. And then honestly, many counties exist somewhere in between. So they have a team, but they're still trying to find their way to maybe build those bridges together and just have a better relationship. SARTs take a lot of work, and it's important to take the time and effort to build these relationships and understand each other's roles better to serve our communities. So I understand that a lot of the time, maybe not a lot of the time, sometimes there are bridges that have been burned in the past. Maybe this was 10 years ago between advocacy and law enforcement. Somebody said something that wasn't professional or just burned a bridge. So now some of you may be still working on building that relationship again. And it's so important to do that. If we want to truly help our survivors in the long run, we need to work together. So please continue that. I know it's hard work. Just be consistent with it. All right. Indiana is not unique in that we have the SART model, but having a state statute that mandates SART is relatively unique. So here is the statute that we have. In 2007, Indiana's General Assembly passed this statute requiring all counties to either have their own SART or join a regional SART. So I have a map later on. I'll show you not kind of, but who is part of a regional SART. And yes. So why do we allow the option for a regional SART? Because Indiana counties can be very different. And a regional SART can be important for our rural communities because not every community has a rape crisis center, sexual assault service provider, or a sexual assault nurse examiner. Sometimes, if a rape crisis center serves multiple rural counties, they may make the decision to have a regional SART because they're still working with all of those same people within all of those counties. The second part of this mandate states that a prosecuting attorney shall appoint the SART if they do not already have one. So the prosecutor shall be appointing the SART. This means either they are running it or they found someone who wants to take on that task and they have given that person permission to start the SART. But the prosecutor themselves should be participating in some way. So that map I was talking about. This one was last updated in September of 2024. I have been working very hard to update a new maps. Honestly, at the beginning of this coming up year, you guys will hopefully see that. So some of these things have changed. Those regional SARTs I was talking about, you can see about in central Indiana, in Howard, Miami. They are Regional Family Services Association of Howard County. They're the center there. And for them, it just made sense because they use a lot of the same resources there. And you'll see a lot of these regional SARTs outlined in yellow. That is also the case, like we spoke about. And then the dark blue, as you can see, are inactive. Some of them are active now. So shouts out to Clinton County. You'll see the new map soon. If you're working on a SART and this map does not represent that, I may know already, but please don't make that assumption. Please reach out to me and let me know. I would love to know any information I can get. All right. SARTs need a protocol, and the protocol should outline who is collecting samples and how they are secured and stored. These samples are the sexual assault nurse examiner samples, the sexual assault kits. So there should be a clear chain of custody and plans for the destruction of these samples. There also needs to be a plan for survivors who choose not to report to law enforcement, which should include their confidentiality. Because as we know, a lot of survivors don't want to be involved in the system, and that is okay. But it's important for them to have the option. If they change their mind, they can come back to their kit and work with their advocate and all of that good stuff. If you have an existing SART, you should have an existing protocol. You can request to view this and learn about the duties listed on the screen. You should be able to reach out to your prosecutor, see if they have the protocol. If you want, you can reach out to me, but I will need to ask the person who's running the SART just in case, and then I should be able to share that with you as well. Why have a SART? So I hope you all have an understanding so far of why we should have a SART, but really, SARTs help to improve the systematic responses to assaults. SARTs can help diminish the short and long term impacts of trauma by engaging interdisciplinary experts to assist and assess the survivor's needs from the initial incident through the healing process. In implementing the SART model, the core members of the SART team are stepping forward to offer a survivor a coordinated response. And the work of SARTs should be trauma informed and survivor centered. Because what is the point of having a SART if you're not going to be survivor centered and trauma informed? That is the best way to help these survivors. More benefits. So we understand some of these responsibilities and limitations of our collaborative partners. When we know what these responsibilities are, we serve the survivors better, like I said just a minute ago. If I know the referral processes, which hospitals have SANEs, and if I may need to call ahead for specific services, it will help me and the survivor have smoother responses and handoffs. So when I was on a SART, it was really, really helpful for me to know what updates there were regarding SANE coverage. Because sometimes, as we know with advocacy, turnover can be a lot with all of these different disciplines. Sometimes sane coverage isn't 24/7 like we want it to be. So sometimes you may need to know, like, do I need to call from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. for a sane exam because there's not coverage at the hospital? So when I was on a SART, that was one of the things that I really, really needed to know was in case I got a call between that time frame, I need to call ahead to get a sane at the hospital because if I went to the hospital without calling, we would maybe be sitting there for hours waiting for a sane. And during that time, the survivor, um, if they could be comfortable in their home for a little bit longer, it just makes it a much better experience. So here are some of the SART core competencies. I will let you read these for a second. I'll read just a few, but I'm not going to read them all. SART's core competencies understands the importance of survivors' rights and self-determination. And this also means understanding the right that a survivor has for reporting what happened to them. SARTs should know the developmentally appropriate questions for interviewing victims or survivors. They should know the state and national laws and regulations regarding sexual violence, including mandated reporting responsibilities. And then going on to core SART members. We covered this a bit earlier, but I want to get into a little bit more of how these people truly help in being in a SART. So, prosecutors, like I said earlier, they should be leading the SART, evaluating evidence, and file criminal charges. If they're not leading the SART, they have discussed this with somebody else who is leading the SART, but they should still be participating. Advocates, emotional support, information and referrals. Law enforcement, there for emergency assistance and investigation, and medical or the SANE sexual assault nurse examiner conducting medical forensic exam, educating the team, and court. So, prosecutors. Prosecutors provide public safety for their community and the survivor by holding offenders accountable through the prosecution of criminal cases. The prosecutor represents the jurisdiction in criminal proceedings and provides expertise about law and its application to the evidence. Prosecutors are responsible for advising and approving charging decisions, offering insight to law enforcement about the evidence necessary to advance the case, and collaborating with experts regarding the significance of evidence, and then presenting that evidence to the jury. Again, the prosecutor plays a key role in developing a SART, and by statute, they appoint the SART or join one of the neighboring counties in that regional SART we discussed earlier. And then the prosecutor is the facilitator of the SART unless another facilitator is chosen, if that makes sense for the community. In the context of a SART, the prosecutor's work is to prosecute the cases in a way that is victim-centered, trauma-informed, and offender-focused to provide legal guidance to law enforcement or to the law enforcement concerning sufficiency of evidence, warrants, and similar matters regarding or related to the investigation of criminal cases to ensure that justice is possible for survivors of sexual violence. This is also to educate the community and jury about the dynamics of sexual violence and to support and protect and honor the victim's rights. We know that justice looks different for everyone, but we also know that this partnership with prosecutors can be very important for those who choose to engage in the criminal legal system. All right. Law enforcement. Law enforcement provide emergency assistance to ensure public safety and conduct criminal investigation. They also play a critical role and have an impact on the survivor's recovery and long term well being. Uh, this just makes me think if a survivor calls the police, that first engagement is going to, like I just said, it's truly going to have an impact on that survivor's recovery and long term well being. That first communication could determine whether the survivor wants to continue to engage in law enforcement or the legal proceedings. But in a SORT, law enforcement have many responsibilities. They provide for the immediate medical, emotional, and physical safety of a survivor, provide trauma informed response, including that trauma informed interview process. They can process the crime scene for physical evidence. They could take a report of sexual assault and start an investigation if it is the wish of the survivor. They can arrange for a forensic examination of the suspect when necessary. They can ensure the survivor's rights to speak with an advocate, and they can document the case appropriately in a written report to participate in court meetings. All right, our next key player is the SANE or the sexual assault nurse examiner. So, our healthcare provider here, they assess the patient for acute medical needs and provide stabilization treatment and or consultation. I'm going to continue with this information about the SANE, but I will say also tomorrow morning, we will be having a presenter discuss a little bit further. So, just so you all know. But ideally, the care that a SANE provides should be by a SANE who is trained for forensic exams, trained to obtain medical forensic history, and collect and document forensic evidence, and then document any other pertinent physical findings from the exam. SANEs offer information, treatment, and referrals. They can follow up with the patient regarding STIs, including HIV, and other acute and non acute medical conditions. They assess for pregnancy and discuss emergency contraceptive. Wow, big word for me. Emergency contraceptive options for the survivor and follow up with patients for forensic and medical purposes. So, NSR SANEs serve as liaisons to the medical community, and they provide current information from medical literature pertinent to the sexual assault survivors and best practice standards. They can collaborate with hospitals to maintain protocols for the best practice, and they can assist with case review and help implement initiatives in the community to prevent sexual violence. All right. Selfishly, this is my favorite one, but everybody's important. Victim advocates. Victim advocates provide crisis intervention and emotional support, referrals, case management, support groups, and hospital or court accompaniment to the survivor. The services that are available through community based advocates are really unique in that many cases they can be available at any point from the onset of trauma to the completion of healing. So, community based advocates, I'll say this again in just a second, but they can help a survivor at any point in their life. Even if the assault happened 30 years ago, 50 years ago, it happened maybe last year and I just didn't want to tell anybody. Victim advocate in a community based setting will always be there. And I wanted to make clarification between two different types of advocates there's community based and then there's systems based. And this can make an impact on the services received and the confidentiality expectations. So, our community based advocates, these are advocates working in a C3 nonprofit that meet the legal definition of a victim service organization. These are our rape crisis centers, our sexual assault, and our sexual assault response programs that will be on a map I show you in just a second. They have a variety of services that I will go over as well, and the services the community based advocates provide are not limited. Something that is important to understand is that from an advocacy perspective, we want to empower survivors to make the decisions that are best for them on their participation in the evidence collection and whether they want to file a police report and participate in the prosecution process. If they do not want to report or participate in the prosecution, they can still receive services from a community based organization. And the services are accessible to survivors from the onset of trauma throughout the healing process, which is different than a systems based advocate. It is not uncommon for the survivor of childhood sexual abuse to come and receive services as an adult, just to work through the things that they've experienced. Because maybe they weren't ready, maybe it wasn't safe for them to come forward. There are a million reasons why somebody wouldn't come for services until 30 years later. In addition, these community based advocates enjoy a different level of privileged communications. It's defined by law that their confidentiality expectations are stricter and different, but they are also still mandated reporters. So if anybody reports a crime, a child or reports that a child is being harmed or that you are going to harm yourself or someone else. I'm a little out of practice with the advocacy, so ask your ask your supervisor what those mandated reports are. Off the top of my head, I may be slightly off, but this confidentiality is to protect the survivor and their privacy and the agency and their funding. So, community based advocates located in a community that has an RCC or a similar program. RCC Rape Crisis Center. They enjoy privileged communications that really strict confidentiality, and they can provide services across the lifetime. Systems based advocates are employed by our government agencies, law enforcement, or the prosecutor's office. Sometimes they have a job title of advocate. So sometimes there's a victim advocate that is working at the local prosecutor's office, and you'll see their title, and you're like, oh, interesting. I'm also a victim advocate at my local RCC. Their work is still valued and important, but it is different. Typically speaking, a survivor would typically only interact with a systems based advocate when they are engaged in the system. If a survivor chooses not to file a police report or participate in criminal legal systems, it is unlikely that they will engage with a systems based advocate. And because these systems based advocates are employed by law enforcement or the prosecutor's offices, the information they know is not privileged in the same way and cannot guarantee confidentiality. So, what a survivor tells a systems based advocate is safe as what they would tell a community based advocate. So, systems based advocate located within law enforcement or a prosecutor's office. Communications with victims cannot be guaranteed to remain confidential, and shorter term services depending on an open case. So their services are not open throughout the lifetime of the survivor. So these top ones, the core RCC services, 24-hour helpline or crisis line. They have on-site hospital and medical advocacy, advocacy in general, criminal justice and legal advocacy, community awareness and outreach, information and referrals, system coordination, collaboration, case management, and support groups. So these ones that you see where the county is fully filled in with a color, those are the rape crisis centers. So these ones offer all of those things that I just listed. And then on the right there, you can see the names of those organizations. Additional services that may be offered are the professional therapy, counseling, primary prevention, shelter, transitional housing. And then the sexual assault service providers, they do not offer all of the required services, but they offer some at least. So these ones are at the bottom of the list on the right. And these are the counties that are outlined. So in the middle of a state here, you can see that I think it's a little blurry, but Beacon of Hope Crisis Center, they are this like reddish outline around the center there. And then this map is, yes, it's our newest map. So we just updated this last month. I will also say the counties, like it's kind of hard to say because looking at a map, I'm like, where is this county? Blackford County is covered by, it's near the right, middle-ish, a little north. Blackford has two different centers that represent them. So you'll see that it's striped through with the Hands of Hope and the Better Way colors. So some counties are very lucky and they have multiple providers that can serve them. These are our community based, so they have the lifetime services, the confidentiality, all of those things. Just arts. The purpose of writing protocols to define the roles and responsibilities of each agency as they respond to survivors. The protocol serves four key purposes: an operational guide established by the founding agencies, a reference guide during problem solving and conflict resolution. So it's really nice when something comes up. You can say, oh, we actually predicted this may happen. Let's bring out the protocol. It's in writing. It's also a resource when there is a change in administration. So, like I said earlier, there's a lot of turnover in disciplines like ours or related to ours. So when there's a change, we can go to the protocol and see what the SART is all about, what our protocols are. It is an informational document to also orient the people who are new to the SART in general. And these protocols are a living document. We write them and we need to be updating them as things change throughout the years. Laws change, services that centers provide change. Maybe we add more service providers to our area because we're very, very lucky. That would be incredible. We need to add them to our protocol. So this is a living document. Please, please, please update your protocol. We have a SART toolkit on our site that is helpful when establishing a SART, and it has sample protocols in it. If you're working on creating a SART, please reach out and we can offer guidance and support. Sometimes it can be helpful to see a protocol from a community that's similar to your own. So if you are, I'm just going to say Clinton County because that's where I'm from. If you are Clinton County, your protocol is not going to look like Marion County's protocol. Clinton County does not have as many resources. So it would be better for Clinton County to maybe look at Howard County's protocol if they're creating one, and that would be a better comparison of services, community. So if you are creating a protocol, and yeah, Kelly just shared that in the chat as well, our SART toolkit. But if you're creating a protocol and you want more references, ask me. I can reach out to that community, see if they're okay with me sharing the protocol, maybe just get you to 2, 3 connections, and you can go from there. So, main components of a protocol: you need a list of members of your SART, mission and value statement, or mission and vision statement. This says description of SART member expectations. I have said this many times because it is important. The protocol for collecting, preserving, securing, and destroying kits, protocol for working with minor victims, as well as an overview of working with human trafficking victims who are adults, and then additional resources specific to your community. I specify the human trafficking victims with adults because if they are a minor, it would fall into this protocol for working with minors. All right, meetings. Your SART should be meeting. Please meet. If you have a SART, meet. Meetings are important to function to help us develop our community relationships, discuss emerging issues, monitor progress, and revisit our mission and goals, as well as assessing changes in the larger community, ensuring sufficient resources, and preparing strategies for addressing the remaining challenges. ICASA recommends meeting at least once a quarter, please, minimum once a quarter. But a meeting schedule of every other month is preferred. Some teams meet in person and some meet virtually, but it's important to be thoughtful about the platform that you're using to remain that confidentiality. There are some teams that do it hybrid, which they meet virtually for most meetings, but come together for in-person case reviews, just to ensure that additional confidentiality. But I would say Sarts are important for all of these reasons, but one of the biggest reasons I can tell you is just knowing the people in your community, knowing the faces, building rapport and relationships. Those are so important. And if you're able to say, Bill at the sheriff's department knows a lot about this situation, and how a survivor may benefit from this. Survivor, let's get a release of information so that me as the advocate can talk with the sheriff about this specific case. And then it just helps ensure further communication with the sheriff's department and the survivor themselves, which is always good for that relationship point if they're in the legal system. Yeah, relationships are important. That's all I can say. And then I guess vision for Indiana. I hope that everybody is victim centered. I hope that everybody is competent, consistent, and compassionate in their response. We really, really would love 24/7 coverage everywhere throughout the state. And we want it to be trauma informed, culturally sensitive, and I especially would love an active SART in every county or region because of the benefits that we have talked about. Here are some of the resources. I'll give you a second, but these slides will be available to you. And that SART toolkit, like I said again, Kelly, my colleague, she put that in the chat so you can have that. This is my information again, but I also put my email in the chat. You'll see that on the slide it says Jasmine.Davis, and then in the chat it's just Jasmine. Both will work for me. So please reach out. That is also my extension 109. And then a thank you to our supporters. But I am available for any questions if you all have them.